I'm Heath Lambert, and you're listening to Marked by Grace, a podcast applying the grace of Jesus to all of life. Should Christians want to give Native Americans their land back? It is Monday, August the 12th, and this is Marked by Grace, where I try to answer the questions you want me to address. If you'd like to submit a question, you can submit that to me at markedbygrace@fbcjax.com. That's markedbygrace@fbcjax.com. And this week, the question I'm answering comes from a Christian who is a public school student. And this student is having a debate with his teacher, and the teacher is arguing that Christians should have, as a matter of biblical justice, the concern to give Native Americans their land back that they have lost throughout the history of the development of the United States of America. And so the question I'm answering is that a Christian thing? Should Christians want to give Native Americans their land back? Hopefully my answer here will help this young high school student and will help you as well. There's obviously some history here. Obviously, there is a history of Native Americans in the land of the United States of America being displaced by westward expansion and the development of the United States of America. That has not been any small or insignificant part of our history. Now we have many of those Native Americans on reservations, land reserved for their use, but they're not able to roam and spread and migrate all over the nation as they once did. And the justice issue is, did modern day Americans take something that wasn't ours that now some biblical demand for restitution should motivate us to want to return? Well, that argument seems relatively easy on the face of it, but there's a few things that it overlooks. One thing that it overlooks is that, at least to my knowledge, there is nobody alive today who took land from anybody who was also alive today. These things are hundreds of years in the background, and there is a biblical principle that the soul that sins shall die. That's from the prophet Ezekiel, and the idea is that each person is responsible for the sin that he committed, not the sins that others committed. So we would have a problem with biblical justice in forcing other people to take responsibility for sins that they did not commit, and allowing other people to receive some sort of benefit that involved a problem they were not the victims of. So there is a biblical justice problem there. Here's another really practical problem. We don't know who to give the land to. So the reality is that if we give the land back to the Native Americans who had it before the people who took over the land had it, well, then we have to keep moving back, because there was other Native Americans who owned and possessed the land before they did, and there were Native Americans, different tribes that owned the land before they did. And so how far back do we want to go? As a matter of fact, if we're going to create the precedent that we gave it to whoever had it before us, then we're going to have to keep going back to the end of time, and that is not ever going to stop, because it's only Adam and Eve that sort of sprouted up out of nowhere. Everybody else has moved and migrated and changed, and there's been migratory patterns of human beings that have gone on since the beginning of the world. And so we would never know when to stop. In fact, we never would be able to stop figuring out who to give it to. The biblical justice concern has to do with the injustice that was part and parcel of American westward expansion. And I want to be morally honest, there were injustices on the part of settlers who were trying to move into these other lands. But here's the thing. There were also injustices on the part of the Native Americans. Everybody was moving around. Everybody was going to places they hadn't been before. Everybody was leaving places that they had come from. And while everybody was doing that, both sides committed injustices. Both sides were extreme and violent and cruel and harsh. It wasn't a problem of just one side. It was a problem of both sides. And it would be wrong to punish the injustices of the side that won the conflict and not punish the injustices of the side that lost the conflict. So there were injustices on both sides, and it's going to be really, really hard to adjudicate how to punish those offenses, especially given the fact, as I said earlier, that none of the people who committed those offenses are alive today. Here's the eye of the tornado. There is a principle that has been around since the dawn of time. Some people call it the law of the land. Some people call it the right of conquest. But here's the idea. You get to keep your land if you can defend it. And if you can't defend it, then the person who conquers you gets to keep it. Listen, that is the hard rules of the land. That's the hard rules of history. You get to get the land you're strong enough to take, and you lose the land you are not strong enough to keep. That's just the way it works. To say it a little bit differently, there is no guarantee of absolute land possession in human history. There's no biblical guarantee. There's no promise from the Lord that whoever has land absolutely gets to keep it. In fact, this reality is very, very traceable biblically. You go to the book of Deuteronomy. And in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1-2, the Bible says, "When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, and clears away many nations before you, Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than you, and when the Lord your God gives them over to you, and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You shall make no covenant with them and show no mercy to them." There's a biblical command from God for the Israelites to drive out the prior occupants of the land. Now listen, there are a lot of biblical and theological arguments to be made here that I am not trying to make. What I'm saying is that from the standpoint of biblical justice, from the standpoint of divine justice, God who makes the rules, He is not violating justice by causing one people to drive out another people. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with a different kind of person driving out a more established people group in the land. And by the way, this works both ways. Israel gets the land in Deuteronomy, but by the time you get to 2 Kings chapter 24, the nation of Babylon is driving out Israel. And so Israel got the land and Israel lost the land. And both of those realities were commanded and superintended by God. So there just isn't any guarantee of absolute land possession, and there's nothing about that that is anchored in biblical justice. In fact, there's no absolute guarantee today in our American culture, but we do have some security. And the last thing I want to say is that security that we have to our land, that security that we have in the rights to property that we have in the American Constitution, is what we would call a civilizational achievement. That is, we had to work hard to get it. There took a lot of precedent, there took a lot of stability, there took a lot of legislation to get it, and you need a strong American government to do that. And so what we need to do is lament whenever there have been injustices in our history, and there have been many. But we should also thank the Lord for the civilizational achievement of security of the land. And we should pray that we would pursue justice to maintain that just protection of the land in the future.